Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. Before we start, I would like to mention something. YouTube is getting very picky about watch time. So please try to watch my video from start to finish. Doing this seriously helps me and the algorithm know that this is a channel worth watching. And this works for any other channel you might enjoy. So please try to always watch from start to finish, as much as you can. Now, on to the stories. After reviewing the gruesome footage of the victims being tortured and dismembered, the court had no choice but to sentence the child serial killer to death by hanging for his heinous actions. The gallows had to be custom built to accommodate the 10-year-old's small stature. Hey guys, before I start this story, I'd like to warn you this is actually a part 3. This writer was cheeky and wrote 2 other parts, one that's the direct prequel to this, and one that is a little side bit of it. I will have them linked down below and in the eye icon for you guys. Now, onto the story. I search for things people are too scared to believe in. Part 2. By Cole Blaze K. I'm so sorry it's taken so long to get back to everyone. Things have been a little busy lately, and reliving what I went through didn't really help. I just need another break and time to myself to sort things out and get in the right headspace. I'm okay though, and I'm no longer being controlled or manipulated by the entity. Thankfully, I got away with a little help from John Doe back at the bar. I remember going through hell 1,000 times over, feeling my skin bubble, boil, and pop from heat. Fingers breaking and teeth shattering from biting so hard, causing of the pain. I still get nightmares and glimpses of it from time to time. I collapse from the headaches. I get remembering everything, but I've tried my best to cope. So here's how I got out. John Doe came in after I was there for a couple days. He said he had a bad feeling that I actually went there to investigate. When he found me, he said I was curled up covered in blood and my eyes were rolled back. The weird thing was that I wasn't in a cellar, or any hole for that matter. Where I was, though, was right in the entranceway, just lying there as if I had never fallen through any hole at all. So he dragged me to his truck and brought me to the hospital. He told me as we were arriving, I began walking up and becoming conscious again. For me, that's when I started to get back to the real world, to this reality. I tried getting off the cart, but the nurse wouldn't let me leave and I ended up getting restrained. So, because of that, I spent a couple weeks in the hospital. Got questioned a bit, but I was still in daze and don't remember much of those conversations. 23 stitches and a couple of unknown fingernails were pulled out of me. That's what they looked like at least. So because of that, police questioned me and kept an eye on me the whole time I was there. A good visit to the psych ward and a visit to the psychologist was how I spent the remainder of my time there. Too bad it wasn't the psychologist I knew. Speaking of him, I haven't heard from him in a while. He did email me, however, but I was unable to open it because the computer time was over. Finally, after being released, I got a ride back to my vehicle and paid John Doe for his troubles. On the way to get my vehicle, he tried to talk to me about what I went through, what I had experienced. But I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. I gave him my information and told him we'd be in contact. Anytime I meet someone on one of my cases that turns out to be real, they want to learn more. So, they go out searching themselves. Some make it back, some on the other hand don't. That's why I usually recommend the only psychologist I know to talk them out of it. He sort of knows what I do, but also doesn't believe and thinks I'm crazy. I don't blame him. I mean, the guy talks to crazy people for a living. Once I get my stuff back and settle somewhere, I'm going to try and get in contact with him. Audio transcript case log 11. Name, Greg Furlock. Location, Indiana. December 2011.
So, you think I'm crazy?
No, I believe that you are, as you put it, search for things to deal with the trauma of losing your parents.
I'm not making that up. Police came and found me. There was a whole case. You can look it up.
I've read the reports and I've heard your story. I've also gone over these so-called cases you've investigated, and they all seem fabricated, as though they were made up in your mind to create some sort of closure.
So, the news clippings, the audio recordings, everything is just fake? I paid people to speak and create fake newspaper articles?
Let's get back to the matter at hand. You're here because you believe you're looking for a certain creature, am I wrong?
I am looking for something, yes, but I have no idea what it is yet.
This could all just be in your head. How about this? You go on some antipsychotics and check in a few weeks and see how you feel. In the meantime, enjoy the scenery in the town. We'll be in touch.
Audio transcript case log 11 over. That was one of the last times I had been in contact with my psychologist. Actual face-to-face contact. We had talked over email a few times here and there. Just to discuss my mental health and what happened in the small town of Indiana. That was one of the toughest cases I had to investigate, but that's for another time. You may be asking why I brought up my psychologist so easily and quickly. Some are probably also thinking, well, this guy's insane. He has a psychologist. Nothing he says could be true. I promise you, it is. When I say I search for things, I do. Whether the case turns up to be true or not is a whole other story. For instance, when I said I was searching for a Wendigo, I was. Do I typically believe in everything I'm told? Not all the time. But it doesn't hurt to just check it out. But to get back on track, here's why I brought up my doctor. He emailed me a month or so ago asking for help in a case he had been assigned. Apparently a bunch of people have been going missing from a town and he wanted my expertise on what it could be. Crazy, right? A person with a doctorate asking their patients for help with something. He seemed worried though in the email. He said he thinks something might be coming after him. I tried emailing him back a few times, but there hasn't been a response. I'm only a few states away, so I guess it doesn't hurt to check it out. So I packed up what little things I had, checked out the hospital, and headed to wherever my GPS was taking me. Along the drive, I kept getting flashes of the entity I'd run into. I see him on the road, or I'd see a light flashing like it wanted me to go that way. I just ignored it and kept driving. Although sleeping when needed didn't really excite me. I'd been plagued with nightmares and sleep paralysis since the incident. So, I usually try to stay awake for as long as I can. Tonight, though, I couldn't do that. As I laid in my back seat ready to take on the dreams, my mind had a different plan. For once, there was nothing. Not a single thing in my dream. Just black, like when you close your eyes in a dark room. That's all I saw. Hearing noises here and there occasionally, but nothing terrifying happened. I awoke to a beautiful sunrise, went into a rest stop to get a coffee, and headed on my way. I felt refreshed, and probably the most well-rested in a long time. Then, as soon as I got onto the interstate, a massive wave of pure darkness surrounded me. While trying to move, I heard something speak to me.
You can't hide forever. I will find you again.
Before I became face to face with sunken in dark eyes and an eerie white smile. Then I woke to the sun just about to come over the horizon and a pit in my stomach. Crawling up front, I grabbed a cigarette and went to get some coffee. Getting back on the road and to my destination was a little difficult. What if I was doing what the entity wanted? What if this was another ploy? But I had to shove those thoughts down with another cigarette and kept on driving. It was about 20 more hours I finally reached the town. Driving through the main road, I realized it was kind of nice, quiet place. There was a beautiful forest on one side of the town and a nice number of stores around the place. After admiring the place for a while, I decided to get a motel room and start my investigation. After getting everything set up and my items in order, I set out for the main road to look around and see if there was anything suspicious. As I was heading down the main steps, I saw an outline of someone standing behind a lady at the counter. Knowing who and what it was, I wanted to ignore it, but I needed all the help I could get to find my friend. When I reached the counter, the lady looked up in a happy manner and said,
"Everything in your room okay?"
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you. I just had a couple of questions on whether or not you've seen someone. I'm looking for an old friend.
Well, who might you be looking for, sweetie?
His name is Greg and he's a psychiatrist. He came here to help with some things going on around town. Have you seen him?
I replied while handing her a picture of my doctor.
He doesn't look all too familiar. The only psychiatrist I know we have in town is Mark. He lives about 3 blocks down from Maine, and is in the only brick house in the block.
Thank you. I really appreciate the help and the room.
Have a good one!
She finally said as I began walking in the direction of the man's house. While walking down Main, I felt a little off, as though I wasn't supposed to be here. An overwhelming sense of dread loomed over me as I laid my eyes on a wall. On the wall was about 12 missing person flyers. Examining them, I was able to make out that the first one disappeared about a month ago, and the latest one was about a week ago. There didn't seem to be any correlation between any of them, no pattern to follow or other clues to help. The first was a little kid and the last was adult male. Everyone in between was of different ages, races, and genders. My initial instinct said it could be a cult or a serial killer, but they don't strike this fast in such a small amount of time. I pulled out my camera, took a picture of the wall, then started my way to this Marks again. The lady at the desk wasn't wrong. She explained it perfectly. 3 blocks down and the only brick house in the block. Well, brick foundation and a white house, but it was the only house on the block with brick. Making my way up the driveway, I began thinking of what to say and asked this man. Did he know Greg? Has he seen or met him? All thoughts cut short as a man exited the front door and made eye contact.
May I help you?
He asked while straightening his tie.
Yes, if you could talk for a few.
I replied, gesturing to sit in some chairs on his porch. The man gave a quizzical look as if he was trying to debate whether or not to speak to me. He looked down at his watch, then back up at me and spoke.
I guess I have a few minutes to spare.
While sitting down, I asked.
Mind if I record?
He nodded in agreement, and we began. Audio transcript case log 27. Name, Mark. Location, small town, Missouri.
So, what's been the deal with all these missing persons around here?
What are you, an FBI agent or something?
Or something. I am an investigator of sorts. I just don't work for any agency. I go around to places with strange occurrences.
It sounds like you have dissociation disorder. Do you have a hard time telling whether you're dreaming or in reality sometimes?
I don't have a dissociation disorder. I am perfectly healthy and fine. I am also not looking for a new psychiatrist. Mine actually came to this place to try to figure out why so many people have gone missing. I was wondering if you, by any chance, had seen him.
Sliding a photograph of Greg to him, Mark picked it up and examined it for a minute, before setting it down and replying.
Interesting, but I haven't seen him. Why would he come here to look for missing people? And if he's your psychiatrist, why is he buying into your delusions?
They're not delusions, and because I helped him one time see the bigger picture and things. How about we talk about the missing people? No bodies or anything have been found.
Not one. To be honest, I was thinking about trying to find them myself. Some folks think it's an urban legend. Others think cult.
Well, what do you think? And tell me about this urban legend.
Well, I don't know what to think. I find it odd how people just up and vanish without a trace. It's not normal. No one just leaves without a trace. When most flee, there's always at least a little part that shows that. But with these, they're just gone. Poof.
And what about the urban legend?
Back on the non-reality train, I see. Okay, so the urban legend has many variations. One is a monster that snatched people and takes them into the woods. Another is a gate to hell that people seem fascinated into going down. And the last is about a creature that lures you into the woods and holds you captive, before finally letting out one massive screech for all to know that the person's soul is gone. But they're all just old tales parents used to tell their kids to scare them.
Well, you seem a little shaken up.
How so?
It was at this point I began to notice Mark's mannerism change. His voice got a little scratchy and his hands shook a little. He was completely fine until he began telling me of the last legend.
Well, considering you're fine telling the first two, I'd say you don't believe them, but that last one, your voice changed and your hand shook, so that either tells me you got cold or you just came to the realization of what might be out there.
There's nothing out there. At least, that's what I used to think.
You saw something, didn't you?
I didn't see anything. I heard something. A screech. I thought it was in my head, but you coming to me with all this makes me rethink what I heard. I have to go, though.
Well, here's my number, if you think of anything else.
Auto transcript case log 27 over. With that, Mark made his way down his path and got into his car. He seemed visibly shaken and pale as he walked off. There's always a problem with sharing what I do with people. They either think I'm crazy, or have some little unknown thing happen to them they shrug off. But once they get done talking to me, that curtain to another reality opens up just a little bit. I'm going to have to come back sometime soon to check up on them and ask a couple more things. Time to find something to eat, though. I haven't had a bite since the truck stop. Maybe someone at the diner will know something. As I entered the diner, I noticed that everyone stopped to take a look at me. Small towns always notice when there's a new person around. Feeling everyone's gaze as I sat down was uncomfortable, but soon everyone returned to their own table. I pulled out my journal and began to take notes of things Mark had said in our interview. I transcribe it to a digital form when I get back to my room. But for now, it was noting and cross-referencing the urban legends he told me to see if it matched anything I had knowledge on. Sadly, nothing I run into matched. My best guess was Banshee because of the screeching, but they don't lure you away. They only wail when death is coming. So, unless it's working with something else, that's off the table. As the waitress came to give me my bill, I asked if she had heard or seen anything weirdly lately. She chuckled a little before finally saying,
"That I have not. There was no screeching, no creature running amok or anything. I don't know if Greg sent you to see if I'd say something different, but there's nothing to say. Everything's been normal besides the missing people. But the town's got its best and brightest on the case."
Wait, you know Greg? Where is he?
I replied a little too aggressively and fast.
No. I don't personally know him. He just strolled into town a little while ago, asking all these questions about the missing people. I told him the same thing I told you. He heard about the screeching from Mark, but being a psychiatrist has to mess with your head after some time.
When was the last time you saw him?
Mark was in yesterday, and I haven't seen Greg for about a week or so. I figured he left because there was nothing to find. Need anything else?
I'm good for now, thank you.
I replied, handing her a 20.
Keep the change.
While packing up, I noticed a man alone in a corner booth staring daggers at me. Trying to ignore it, I put on my jacket and headed to the exit. Just as I reached for the door, the man grabbed my arm and whispered something to me, before abruptly opening the door and pushing me out. A little confused, I began to walk down the street, his voice echoing my mind.
"Leave. You're drawing too much attention. They'll take you.
What did he mean by that?
They'll take you too."
Is it a cult that I'm dealing with? If so, this is not something I want to get into the middle of. I've run into my fair share of cults and never really turned out that well. Most are either dead, imprisoned, or just plainly disappeared. As I got back to my room for the day, I noticed a note on my door. Consciously looking around, I pulled it off and then began to read it.
"If you're seeing this, that means I am gone. You're in over your head. Get out of town."
The letter wasn't signed by anyone, but I took the warning into consideration. I'll spend one more day here, and if nothing shows up, I'll leave town. Another night plagued with nightmares and little to no sleep. This time it felt different, though. It felt as though the entity was warning me, telling me as well to leave. That scared me even more, that this being that had been plaguing me wanted me to go too. But it also makes me wonder that if listening to its warning brings me closer to meaning it. It also kept trying to get me angry enough to come in contact with it. I'm smarter than it, though. I learned from a man on one of my dream walking cases that sometimes you can materialize a being in your dream if you touch it, meaning it'll come into our universe. There's different theories on dreams and the power of them. Some say it's a different universe, others a hellscape, and finally an alternate reality. So if you ever dream and it seems like something really wants you to touch or grab it, don't. Because you could be bringing whatever it is into your world to wreak havoc. And it'll be all your fault. Getting past that, I've decided to talk to Mark again today. He seemed uneasy and in a hurry the last time we met. It's Saturday now, so he should hopefully be home and not working. Well, Mark isn't home. His house was unlocked and no one was inside. I hope he didn't go missing as well. I really need to figure this out before more people go missing. As I was leaving his house, I heard it. This weird, screeching noise that left as fast as it came. After I heard that, I knew he was gone. My only lead just up and disappeared or was taken. It's been 3 days since Mark has been missing, and I have no leads or any ideas of where to go. I began walking the edge of town until I saw it. There that thing was again. That entity, except this time, it was just staring at me, motionless. Then lifted up in a pure black arm and pointed in the direction of where I needed to go. Standing there frozen, thousands of thoughts running through my mind until it clicked. When we first met, I was in his domain. Now, he's in mine. But why is he helping me? I looked in the direction of his oily black finger, and it was pointing into the woods. When I looked back, he was gone.
Fuck.
I said to myself, frozen, trying to gather up what I saw. That was the first time I'd seen it in person since the incident. I had to push down the feelings of dread and go back to my room to gather some supplies. Well, sorry for not finishing this case and sharing it for a while. It's been an interesting situation. Things went not as planned, but let me break down what happened. So once I got back in my room, I grabbed my flashlight, gun, water, and a few other things. I began my journey into the woods. It was pretty beautiful and pleasant walk aside from going into unknown towards the unknown. There was about an hour left of sunlight when I came across it, an old, disheveled building in the middle of the woods. The access road had been covered in overgrown and fallen trees, so I'm guessing that's why no one came here. It looked like an old rusted Quonset, holes all over and windows broken, almost ready to fall over. Shining my flashlight inside, I noticed it was trashed, empty boxes and garbage strewed about. Some old furniture and a refrigerator tipped, definitely abandoned for years. Checking the door, it was unlocked and opened with a loud creak. Mice scuttled across my feet as I entered into the darkness, testing a light switch to my right to see if any worked. Thankfully, one of the 4 worked and turned on a light in the back of the Quonset.
That's not creepy.
I thought as I made my way to the back in the maze of garbage and furniture. When I reached the back, I heard some scuttling from behind and turned to see garbage being moved and then ceasing.
Must be rats.
I said to myself as I turned back around to look at the cellar door on the ground. Hesitating as I began to reach down and open it up, I grabbed the cold steel handle and threw open the door, only to see a nice wooden staircase heading underground. I began my decline into the void, flashlight showing the way. It was about 15 steps until I hit the flat floor to the side of another door, an old wooden door. Cracks and paint chips off with a rusty crystal handle. As I entered the main room and looked around, I noticed a man lying on the floor, although he wasn't the only one. Multiple people all sitting or standing in what looked like a paralytic state. Focused back to the man, he was unlike the rest of them. He looked to have maybe been the newest one there. He was the cleanest out of them all. He was dressed in a nice suit, had on glasses, and was beginning to grow some scruff. The more interesting thing was the white tube pulsating in his mouth. Everyone in the room had one that seemed to be down their throats. The difference between the one on the floor and the rest was that one seemed to be bruised and bleeding. Kneeling down to check for a pulse, I also noticed blood and bile in the front of the man's mouth. It was fresh. Then it hit me who it was. Mark. As I reached for the tube and got my first hand around it before stopping once I heard screeching. It seemed as though the sound was coming from inside of him. I continued to pull it out as Mark was twitching and withering as the tube finally left his body. When it was out, the thing seemed to lunge back at him, then focus its attention on me. It looked like a close-up picture of a tapeworm's mouth, but this had tiny little eyes. It began squealing and lunging at me until it finally ceased. Then I heard it. Something speaking. I quickly turned on my recorder and listened in again to see if it would speak again. As I stood, I noticed something sitting in a throne at the end of the room. Audio transcript case log 27. Name unknown. Location woods outside of town.
Let my child go.
This worm thing is your child?
Everything in here has become my child, and you have interrupted my peace.
What are you doing to all these people?
I do not have to answer questions to some pathetic mortal like you.
You're not the first so-called powerful being I met. You do not scare me.
Ah, yes. I can sense the fear, darkness, and dread in you. It would taste so delectable right now, but this fear isn't from me.
Exactly. I don't fear you.
You will learn to.
With that, an aura appeared behind the unknown being, and I could see all of its features. It looked like a swirling mass of leathery vines covering its body. They seemed to be constantly moving or pulsating as it spoke.
You will very much learn to feel me and fear what I can do.
Curiously and surprisingly, I took a few steps closer. As I was able to focus on it more, I got a better look at it. The thing didn't have one face, but multiple moving about. There was one where the head was, another showing on his shoulder as those veins opened up to make way, followed by another appearing on his chest and then stomach. The thing was hideous, and each face misshapen and stuck in a grotesque manner, sending shivers down my spine as I stood paralyzed. Fuck, this thing is actually terrifying.
Now I can almost taste your fear of me. But it's still not as strong as everyone else's. Curious, what has you so afraid that even my true nature doesn't kill you?
Flashes of the entity went through my mind as I finally spoke.
I'm just looking for my friend. I'll take him and leave. Then you can continue whatever this is.
I can't let you do that. We need him and all the others in order to feed us. We have been through thousands of civilizations and planets. We will not stop now. Nothing will stop us.
It's one person. 2 people gone. You have at least 20 down here.
We are many. We need all the food we can get. Soon, you along with this world will be a part of us.
Fine. Be that way.
In a quite stupid decision, I grabbed the pulsating tube on the ground and put it in my mouth and swallowed it. I could hear myself gagging and withering in pain on the audio recording as the thing went further down my throat. Then, all black. Audio transcript case log 27 end.
You are not supposed to be here.
I heard a familiar voice say somewhere in the darkness.
Why not? Is this all it is? Just a black pool of nothingness?
I replied as I slowly drifted around in what seemed to be an endless void. It was as though I was in space, but every star had gone out.
I have put you through a construct like this before. Although, this abomination's is nowhere near the perfectness of mine. There's holes and glitches all over. Pathetic.
Then it hit me. The entity. I was inside his own creation, almost like a barrier between the creature's world and the entities. Was it protecting me?
Where am I?
You already know. You are inside a construct of my own making. Don't want to damage your precious goods.
What's it supposed to mean?
I have found your friend. I'll bring you to him. But remember, you owe me.
With that, I saw a bright light open in the darkness. Once I was able to focus, I could see that I was on a sidewalk in front of a hospital. Next thing I know, I'm standing on the sidewalk, as though the void I was in never existed. It felt so real, but something was off. In the distance, the same pattern of birds kept flying by, and the world seemed too quiet. The entity was right. This was nothing like his. The only reason I could tell something was off in the entities was because he showed himself to me. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, I head inside the hospital. As I reached the front desk, a lady spoke.
Good evening. How may I help you?
It felt like spikes going down my back as she said those last words. It was not human. It was like something was still learning to mimic.
I'm just here to visit.
I replied as I made my way to the elevator.
Who are you visiting?
She asked as I kept walking, ignoring her. Once the elevator doors closed, I was able to loosen up a bit and get a grip. Looking at the buttons, I noticed the one for the 3rd floor was all black, and the rest weren't.
That must be it.
I said to myself, pressing the button. As the elevator began to move slowly upwards, it felt as though an earthquake was beginning to happen. Shaking and rumbling getting worse and worse until it made me collapse and the elevator stopped moving. As I looked up, I saw the unknown creature in the metal doors reflecting, then disappeared. It was not happy with whatever I was doing. Standing up, I pressed the button again, but nothing was happening. The elevator was shut down and unable to move. I was in there for what felt like hours, then days, trying to get that god-forsaken door open. Trapped and starving, fingertips bleeding from attempts to pry open the door. Disheveled, starving, and beaten, I cursed the door as I was sitting in front of it. Until finally, what felt like a week had passed. A thin, pure black line made its way down the slit between the door, making it open just a bit. I quickly shot up, digging my fingers between the doors and prying them open with all my might. It was stuck between floors, about 1 foot of a gap into the 3rd floor, a gap I could climb through, or die by, if the elevator fell. As I reached for the ledge and began to pull myself up, I somehow ended up in the middle of the hall standing. Looking around confused, the elevator door closed with a ding and left the floor.
Huh? Some things definitely could be worked on here.
I said aloud as I walked through the corridor scanning rooms. Not really knowing what I was looking for, I heard a familiar voice in a room say,
How did we get here?
Stopping in my tracks, continuing to listen to their conversation, I was finally able to tell who it was. It was Mark. Making my way through the doorway, I noticed him and a cop talking. The cop glared at me as he shoved his way past me and left.
What are you doing here?
Mark asked while adjusting his bed.
Looking for my friend and also you.
Well, you found me. You figure out what happened?
You don't know, do you?
Know what?
That none of this is real.
He sat there for a moment, puzzled and staring into space. It was as though some mental battle was happening before he finally spoke up.
No, it can't be. I got out. I escaped.
I'm sorry, but you didn't. It looked like you did for a moment. Sadly, it wasn't long enough.
Then that means you're fake, you sick fuck. Why are you doing this?
Calm down. I put myself here to find you and Greg. Not the brightest idea, but we're gonna get out.
There's no way to get out. I tried. Nothing worked. By the way, your buddy Greg is a dick.
Yeah, he can be sometimes. Come on, we gotta find.
As I turned to leave, I saw him in the doorway. He was covered in some mysterious liquid and panting before saying,
We really need to go. What's the escape plan?
As I was about to say something, I heard the entity's voice.
I did my part. Now do yours.
With that, we got surrounded in darkness before everything went out. I awoke on the floor gagging as I could feel the tube pulsing and moving down my throat. I gripped it as hard as I could and began pulling it out, hearing it screech and feeling it fight before finally letting loose and coming out. Once it was out, I puked, and then I began to smash the thing against the floor until it stopped moving. As I was on my knees, coughing and catching my breath, I looked over to see one of the tubes had gotten back into Mark. That's how he was back in there. He was jolted awake, ripping the thing from within him, and began puking. As I was staying up, I saw Greg on the other side of the room from me wiping his mouth. Audio transcript case log 27. Name, unknown. Location, woods outside town.
You and Mark, get out of here. I'll be right behind you.
But
Go now.
Them scuttling away can be heard before a voice emerges in the silence.
You stupid, insipid fool! You are poisoned with the void. Now you've poisoned me and my others. You will pay for what you've done.
The void?
You have no idea what it is that you are playing with. No mortal would be able to function, much less survive with that disease. Doesn't matter. You won't be alive for long.
Audio transcript case log 27 end. With that, multiple of the weird, fleshy tubes slithered towards me and wrapped themselves around my legs and up my torso, fighting and screaming at the pain as these creatures bit all over my body, taking out bits of flesh. I saw it. The entity standing above me. It leaned in close and spoke.
This is where you own me. This abomination doesn't deserve life. It is a mockery of what pure darkness can do.
The entity reached its hand out to me as though he wanted me to shake it. Every fiber in my body was telling me no, but there was nothing else that I could do. The pain was unbearable. The creatures were biting and tearing away pieces of flesh. I wiggled my arm free and grabbed him by the wrist, finally enacting a deal I would regret. Then he was gone. The creature had stopped and withered away, slowly slithering back until they stopped. As I began to regain myself, I looked up to see the entity behind the unknown abomination. It was shaking and withering in its throne, seeming as though it was the most immense pain of its life. Finally, the entity lifted its hand up and grabbed at both sides of the thing's head.
You are an abomination.
He spoke before twisting the abomination's head and ripping it off at the same time. The entity then looked at me, dropping the head and saying,
You and I have a lot of work to do. Come, let's get started.
This story was narrated by me, 242 Reads. All credit is given in order of appearance. The main character was played by Grim Reaper. Greg Furlock was played by Limited Stories. The Entity was played by Horror on the Rocks. The receptionist at the hotel was played by Lady Spicaria. Mark was played by James Not Jack. The waitress at the restaurant was played by Queen of Panic. The random guy at the restaurant was played by As the Raven Dreams. Random Note Guy was played by Gamma Akitobi. Creature in the House was played by Phoenix Fire, and the receptionist at the hospital was played by Duchess of Darkness. If you're interested in anyone you heard, all their links will be in the show notes / description box. And please remember to tell them 242 sent ya. When I died, I always expected to see the pearly gates. But I never expected to see them in such ruinous conditions, as if they've been abandoned for centuries. And with that, my friends, our time together has come to an end. As always, I would like to thank the writer who let me read their story today. I'm very happy that that one side story actually had a better ending than I originally thought. And I really hope there's a part 3 in the future. And of course, I'd like to thank the narrators who lent me their voices to bring the story to life. Please remember to check them out. When I first read I Don't Know What's Happening Anymore, I really thought it was a standalone story. I knew that I Search for Things was going to have a second part. When I did those 2 stories, part 2 wasn't out. I had no clue that these 2 stories were originally connected. So very well done, Cole. You did an absolutely amazing job with this. I would really love a comment to know if you guys really enjoyed this story as much as I did. And also to tell the writer if you would like a part 3. I actually always send a link to the writers so they can hear these stories as well. It's a lot of work, and as a writer myself, I know how amazing it is to hear someone else bring one of your stories to life. Now with all that said, if you did enjoy this story, please hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, please subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this channel grow as well, please share this video with anyone who might enjoy it. Though, hopefully you would send them to part 1 or the side story first. It's kinda rude to get them into the middle of a series. What I mean, maybe we can hook them on it. If you would like to help in other ways, I do have Patreon and memberships where for $1 a month you get early access to these audios and bonus stories. If you would like to do just a one-time donation instead, I do have Super Thanks, Buy Me a Coffee, and PayPal. As well as some merch if you like my cute little avatars on something. I know I'm very repetitive about all this stuff, but it's because the YouTube algorithm is very picky. Liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, all these things tell the YouTube algorithm that this is a channel that maybe they should show others. It's why I've always mentioned at the end of my videos. But as always, guys, thank you for watching and listening. It really means the world to me. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.